You know, it's not just
that's
about.
right. I mean, I think that's the important thing to think about here is that in this country, anyway, every one of us is the government.
Right. We're supposed to be the government, a democracy.
And we need to take it back. And you're absolutely right, though. I mean, the interests of large corporations have become excessive in our government. They've actually taken away privileges that are granted to people, individuals in our society. And until the individuals of our society decide that they're going to take that back and demand it, you know, they will continue to pursue their own personal interests as corporations, and we're going to see
I think
more
I
and more
read
of this go on.
that there were 12 or 13,000 lobbyists from the financial industry.
I've heard 6 healthcare lobbyists, each congressman. I mean,
something like that.
Yeah.
And the energy industries, of course, have a great number of lobbyists and are giving campaign donations. And that's part of the power. But I wanted to add something else. I think this is being discussed a great deal by even by our mainstream media. I mean, the money that's flowing. But something else that I read in Bill McKibben's book, Earth,
hold it up,
is the difficulty of changing institutions. And he describes on one page how long it took, way over 50 years, to move from a coal-based society in the 19th century to an oil-based society.
So we really got to move to a solar-based society, I think. And I mean,
that's
going to be a hard thing.
We have to move to that, and he was just warning that this is going to take, because of the institutional inertia, it's going to take a long time. So you have all that money we've just described. We also have an institutional, or what would you call it, just and therefore governmental.
The biggest blockage,
problem.
and we talked about this a little earlier, I mean, corporate personhood. Before 120, 130 years ago, corporations didn't have this power of corporate personhood, and lobbyists were corporate lobbyists were completely, there weren't any, I mean, and they weren't allowed to donate any money to our campaigns, and it was really corporate personhood and this freedom of speech for corporate persons that's allowed sort of the capture of our government. And this seems like a harsh term, but FDR said that when your government, when the power, it's all about power, and when power becomes concentrated in the hands of a few people or one person, that is, he defined it as fascism. I mean, I wouldn't say we're a complete fascist government, but we definitely have moved to have some elements.
Proto-fascist tendencies.
Quasi-fascism. I mean, and it seems like a crazy term. You think Hitler or something like that, but I mean, that's FDR's definition. It's about a concentration of power. And we really have to take some of that power back, and I think the way to do that is and really the people have to become informed. A lot of people just don't learn these things on television, corporate media. I mean, but I mean, it's we really have to fix our elections and in corporate personhood, and there's ways we can do that. I mean, if we really want to. I mean.
Yes, well, it's up to the will of the public, but. The public is often paralyzed by the.
Well, we feel disempowered and helpless.
Use of money. There's one other thing we haven't mentioned. There is a small but fierce minority of Americans, but strongly represented in Congress, who hate government. They hate government regulation.
Well, yeah.
And of course, the corporations hate government regulation.
So
but there's also a great number. There's a minority of Americans who hate it also. And then they give a credibility
to that special interest.
To this opposition to government regulation.
And the precise origination of this kind of conflation of sort of what you mentioned is really, it's Milton Friedman's ideology. I mean, before Milton Friedman, we had more of a capitalist kind of idea. Capitalism isn't perfect, but I mean, we had a capitalist idea where you have competition and you have businesses compete and the ones that don't compete and fail or whatever. But then with Milton Friedman, he had this new free market neoliberal ideology that was like against any government interference with business. More freedom for corporations. He always uses these glowing terms like freedom for individuals, individual liberty, but really what it translates into is no regulation for regulation for corporations, and he's against all social programs except the socialized military. Because I mean, with his economic ideology, it creates massive economic inequality, and if you have a large proportion of poor people, they may eventually threaten concentrated wealth.
I want to make a comment on your point about what's going on in the small vocal minority, and I think you're alluding to what we the phenomenon we've called the Tea Party in the past couple of.
It's really a diverse crowd, though. I mean,
it is diverse, but they do include opposition to government
regulation. From like the where it's coming from, a lot of the fuel from Fox News and Glenn Beck and these talking heads that have really helped fuel the Tea Party, and a lot of the rhetoric that I've seen used. You have what seems to be a lot of confused people who are upset with the apparent corruption in government, and so they're attacking all these social welfare programs, entitlements, and
well, I mean,
the welfare state, but they're not talking about the huge spending in the police state, in the military state, and they're not addressing where all the spending, where most of the GDP is being wasted. Well, not in the welfare state, but in the military state that we built up since after the World War II. And they're not addressing that. They're not talking about civil liberties that are being impended on from the drug war. They're talking about civil liberties being impended on from healthcare. I mean, it's just the logical fallacies that are being used in that movement has been built out of a lot of ignorance.
I think there is absolutely a lot of ignorance within the movement. But I mean, I think some of the people have good hearts and know that something's wrong. It's just they don't understand, and they're taking these cliches from people like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh.
I've talked to people in the Tea Party I've talked to people in the Tea Partiers supposedly who seem to be very intelligent, rational people who have a lot of the same concerns that I have about our government. But the problem that I'm getting from these people is I don't think they see what the Tea Party movement really is, as far as like on the national level, with coming out of these talking heads that are promoting something that's not what I don't really think their real agenda is. And so they're getting swept up in this, and they have people like Sarah Palin talking for them. But people like Sarah Palin really don't know what the hell's going on. So,
there's a lot of truth to this, and I think you've seen some of this even in the last couple of weeks. In our country, the people seem to be very angry about something, but many of them don't really know what they're angry about. They can't articulate their anger very well. And you've seen this, to go back to the oil spill, we've seen endless criticism in the last 2 weeks or so about the failure of the government response to this thing from people who actually don't believe in government. They actually want less. There's the people who advocate smaller government, get government out of our lives and get the regulators away from us. But this catastrophe has happened, and now all they can do is talk about where was the government response to this? Really, why isn't the government doing something? Well, the fact is there is no response to this, and the government has done what they can do to respond to this, which is virtually nothing in the scale of the response that is needed to deal with this. We don't know how to do that. And so, unfortunately, again, we're back to this tragedy that we have that's ongoing. It's a slow motion catastrophe.
Well, and it was the deregulation in the first place that helped it even happen.
Exactly. Well, exactly. That's right. That's exactly right.
Well,